two, one. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to No Offense. We have an extremely special guest on today. I don't even know where to start with his credits. He's produced for a number of people, starting with A Boogie, Russ, Trippie Redd, Kid Laroi, legends like Dre, The Game, 50. I mean, the credits go on and on. I would need a legitimate book to even start even processing how many, but we're really happy to have him on today. The one and only Scott Storch.
What up, what up, what up?
How you doing, sir?
I'm good, man. Thanks for having me.
I appreciate you coming on. So you're back in Florida now.
I'm back in Florida.
You miss it?
You know what? Florida's always going to be home for me. It's where I spent most of my childhood. It's where my mother lives. It's like, this is like what defines your real home, your town. I think.
So Florida's like the home base for you. Always has been, right? Mm-hmm. You don't miss the LA vibe at all?
I don't miss Philly. I don't miss LA. I don't miss New York really at all.
Florida, right?
It's Florida.
Florida all the way. So going back, I mean, you first grew up, you were in Philly, right? That's where you were born, or you were born in Florida?
No, I was born in New York, and I moved as an infant to South Florida, to the Broward County area, and grew up there. And when I was like 15 years old, I moved in with my father. And as soon as I moved in with him, we moved to Philadelphia for like a while. And that's where I really got into music.
Your father had some backgrounds in music beforehand, right?
Well, not my father, but his brother.
His brother?
His brother was in a pretty big rock band called the Vagrants.
Really? Okay. So when did you start, we all know you're a whiz on the piano. When did like your first start for the love of when did you start realize that you could do music and start like playing the piano? What was your introduction to that whole process?
Look, I used to use a tennis racket and like sit in front of the mirror and make like I was playing like heavy metal shit. But, then we had a piece of furniture, which was like an old rickety piano, upright piano in my house, nothing extravagant. And I just sort of started messing with it, and I had just gravitated to it, and it became everything to me, and to the point where my parents were like, yo, go outside and play. I'm like, nah, I want to just play this piano. Shit.
Never any other instruments, always just the piano?
Yeah, just piano, and really like figuring out how to play by ear all the songs that I was listening to at the time. That would kind of like, I guess, gave me an understanding of the way songwriting was, and like just like learning those songs and learning structure for chords and melody. Yeah. And, learning so many songs, and then finally learning light chord knowledge, like what the chords are. So I would buy sheet music and I would like see the chords at the top and figure out whatever's in the blanks.
So no lessons, ever self-taught everything?
Couple of lessons, and then no, it was just I taught myself.
Yeah, there's no theory, nothing, just basic stuff.
Yeah.
Wow,
I've been faking it for 30 years.
I mean that's the craziest part, because a lot of these guys, like musicians, they don't like, you hear a lot of them don't know any music theory. I mean, I've seen you work, and like it's amazing, like your ear, just like not knowing any theory and just being able to just know the right melodies. Like I think it's extremely impressive, just because I play guitar myself.
Yeah, man. I'm receiving satellites on my house.
So you start playing piano, right? What was your first introduction to, did you start with like in a band? Like what was your first introduction to working with like a group and like getting into like the whole music type of scene?
I was a little kid, and I met these kids at a talent show called the Omni 5, and they were like a new edition cover group. It was me and 5 brothers, and we would, did our thing, and we rehearsed, and I learned all these new edition songs, and we would, play at talent shows and stupid stuff. And
so from there, that was when you were in Philly, right? You were still in Philly
that's still in Florida.
Florida, okay.
Yeah.
So jumping forward a little bit, when did you start to meet, like when you joined up with the Roots, right? Because that was the first
like
big
just
thing.
Turning 16.
16 years old. That's crazy.
Yeah.
And how did you end up meeting those guys?
There was a guy who worked in my dad's office named Richard Nichols, who was an aspiring manager. God rest his soul. Richard was an amazing guy, and he met a guy named AJ Shine, who was like, at the time, he was kind of at the helm of what the Roots like management was. And then Richard got involved and became the manager as well, the main manager. And there was like an audition for a keyboard player and a bass player. And one of Richard's friends, this guy named Hub, he became the bass player and I became the keyboard player. But I ended up, for the majority of the time when I was in the group, the majority of the melodies and music I wrote, as well as being the piano player. So I was composing as well for them.
Did you have any experience before that, or you just like, before you started joining them, were you making stuff on your own by that time? Or
Not really so much. I was just had a good understanding of it, and I was listening to a lot of like native tongue type hip hop stuff, like, you know, De La Soul, Jungle Brothers, Tribe Called Quest. And this is like really like the vibe I was on. So it kind of matched really good with what the Roots were doing. It was like hip hop jazz. So, you know, all these like Bob James sounding like electric piano parts and cool stuff. Like I was like getting in that zone and just playing that stuff. And I was like a well of, you know, just like little chord structures and chord figures. And I was just doing it, freestyling it.
At this point, were they already moving, or were they still hustling to get more known?
No, I mean, we were hustling. We were setting up on the streets, borrowing power from stores on South Street in Philly. And like we were jamming out, block parties and whatever. And then one day, a guy who was actually here last night in my house, he became my manager, Derek Jackson. Like much later, he became my personal manager. But he came to this block party to see somebody else and happened to see us. And he was like, yo, this is crazy. And he brought us around and to all the labels, and he got us $1 million
Wow.
record deal
Wow.
at the time to Geffen Records for an unknown group that was doing something that wasn't part of any genre of music. It was like hip hop jazz played by a live group. So
that was kind of rare back then. Was that kind of rare for
Yeah.
Because I feel like nowadays you always see people like, you know, they need momentum for a label to come grab them, right? So back then it wasn't like that. They grabbed you guys. Some guy just trusted, saw potential, and just shopped you guys around.
Yeah. So we were a band. It was like a marriage, and then I kind of like grew out of it. I didn't feel like I was looked at as a significant member of the group, even though I was, I think, one of the most significant members of the group. So I left, and I went on to become a producer. And through my life, I've had like this thing that repeatedly had happened where I had to take a step backwards to take a step forwards. And that was the first step backwards I had to make. I was now leaving a group that was on its way to success with a record deal. And I knew it wasn't like gonna give me the full potential of what my career would have to offer. So I left the group. I pursued a career as a producer. And, you know, I remained civil with the group, and we were cool to the point where even I had my own studio in the same building where the Roots were. I have a studio at Sigma Sound, which is the same studio that the Roots are recording in. I have my own room upstairs. And Questlove came up to see me, and he was like, yo, we need something for the new album for Things Fall Apart. And I happened to be in the studio recording with this singer that worked at Urban Outfitters. Her name was Jill Scott. And we were writing a song for a project for her, and the song is called You Got Me.
Oh.
And Questlove heard the song, and he was like, yo, I need this for the Roots album. So it ended up going on the Roots album and becoming a Grammy Award-winning single. Yeah, that was already done, was finished, it was ready to go. And then at the last minute, they made one change to it. And instead of using Jill Scott's vocal, they switched it to Erykah Badu.
Oh, wow.
She was kind of crushed, even though I told them I really wanted them to use her vocal. It was just a label call, so I had no control over it.
Yeah. Did you get credit for that Grammy like you should have?
Yeah.
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 Shoot. So after that happened.
But it was, you know,
yeah,
kind of like still standing in the shadows of
right.
everything.
Right. And at that point you were like, how long after you had left them had they came to you with that?
It was like 2 years.
2 years. And were you like slowly building up your portfolio as a producer, working with other artists?
Yeah, somewhat. Yeah.
Yeah.
First artist I got a chance to work with after my departure from the Roots was Busta Rhymes and Capone Noriega and a few others, and just was hitting the streets with Derek Jackson trying to get placements.
Yeah.
And I would like literally take these days, run around to every major label in New York and sit with every like kind of entry level A&R person that we could find access to. And then we started getting to more important people, and it just was like a slow build.
Just network with everybody you possibly could.
Yeah, it was not easy.
No. Was that probably the most like beneficial thing you could have done, was going around just networking?
Yeah.
Yeah. And working with Busta Rhymes for the first time.
Yeah.
How was that session?
That was dope.
Yeah.
I couldn't believe it. And he was cool as hell. You know, he was one of the first believers. And we made a song called Blot Out. And it was like used on the album, and it's kind of a cool song.
At that point, was he was already signed to a label? Was he already popping at that point?
Yeah. He was very popular. Yeah, he was a huge artist.
And going into that first session, were you at all like nervous about like what, like, did you have any doubts in yourself of what you could do as a producer at that point?
I mean, not really. I bet on myself.
Yeah. I read from one of your other interviews. What did your friends say? They said that they thought you were gonna be the Pete Best.
Yeah, they said I was gonna be the Pete Best of the Roots.
I think they
basically like the guy who left the Beatles.
I think they were a little bit wrong about that.
Yeah, but I just knew that I aspired to be so much more than just a keyboard player for a band.
Yeah,
and I didn't want to be on the road all the time. I like having a home base and staying in the studio. I'm like studio rat, man. You know. Especially at that time. I just wanted to be in the studio creating from the time I woke up to the time I went to sleep.
And going on past that, how did you start? Because I know the big thing I feel like really put you on the map was, you know, your work with Dre, obviously.
Yeah.
Could you go over like how that whole relationship got established? And
yeah, so I flew out to LA. Look, I was, starving artist. I might have a couple of records or whatever, but still broke. So I went out to LA to do an open mic, and I was a keyboard player for this. It was also a roots-based open mic thing. And they was like, yo, we need you to play keys on this thing. And I was like, cool, I'll play. It was like a women in music series called The Black Lily. And I was at the Martini Lounge in LA. And I ran into one of my homegirls from Philly, and she was there. I didn't expect to see her. She was just out in LA now. And I was like, what are you doing here? And she's like, yo, I got signed to Dr. Dre. And she's like, yo, you were always mad cool to me. I want you to come down and, show Dre, maybe, there's some synergy there, and you can, play the piano for him or whatever, play him some beats or whatever. I didn't have any beats with me, so I had to play the piano for him. So I went down. By the way, that person was Eve, the rapper that put me down with Dre. And she had signed to Aftermath for a while. And then she was moved to Rough Riders, after a while. But, I went down to see Dre in the studio, and I waited in the lobby for hours, and he finally came out and said, yo, Eve said you're pretty dope, whatever, let me hear some shit. And I was like, well, I can just play the piano for you and see if, there's anything there. So we went into this live room. I was nervous as shit. And I was just like, I need to play some scary ass, like ominous type shit for Dre. And I started playing like some like cool like stuff, just randomly, anything off the top of my head, nothing planned. And he's like, after a few minutes, he stopped me. He left the room. I was like, I don't think he was interested. He came back with this other dude named Larry, who was like his, day-to-day kind of manager guy. And they were like, look, here's a key for this hotel. Here's a big chunk of money. We want you to stay here. I was supposed to go back to Philly the next day. All right. And we were staying at this hotel. It was a rundown shitty hotel in LA. And he's like, yo, I want you to stay here and just help me make this album, this new Chronic album I'm making. I was like, okay. And I knew I was facing back in Philly, being like 2 months behind in rent.
Fuck
Bro,
that.
was all fucked up. Like, and I was like, fuck it. I'm gonna just do it. Do what I gotta do. Now I had rent money. I could pay my rent. I could stay and do what I had to do. So I went to go back to the, this is real talk. Like, I'm not trying to like, whatever. But when I went back to the hotel with the rest of the Roots members that were there and we were doing this open mic, I told them what happened. And they're like, oh man, you fucking 5 years too late working with Dre. Dre's done. I was like, yeah, all right, cool. Dre's done. I'm fucking going to play with Dr. Dre. And we went on to make Eminem's album, the Chronic album, 900 million other hits. So I guess Dre wasn't done.
No,
it was just some hater shit.
Yeah, honestly. I mean, yeah, just stepping back a little bit, just like, even just, was it kind of like surreal? Like you're sitting in the lobby, all of a sudden Dr. Dre comes out, legend of the game.
No, it was legend. It was legend. When I went back the next day, Snoop Dogg was in there. And I'm like smoking weed and rolling up with Snoop Dogg and hanging out with all kinds of people, like classic people.
Shit,
like
what the fuck
legends.
is going on? Yesterday I have this, and now I'm smoking with Snoop Dogg.
And they treat me like family.
Yeah.
They treat me like family.
How are their sessions like? Are they just vibing the whole time? Like how are those sessions like with them?
It's like Dre's like a conductor, and he's got the orchestra, and he's kind of like pushing everybody to their fullest potential and like making the most of everybody. And he's able to hear what everybody's playing and diagnose it and interpret it and like pick the best of everything.
So he's got the nastiest ear.
We have every toy that there is on the market. We had every keyboard, everything. And at that time, we did all our beats on MPC 60s. And like we had like 5 MPC 60s all chained together through the whole room. Like I had one, Dre had one, Melman had one, Mike Elizondo had one. There was an extra one, like, and we were just recording all at the same time. Dre had the like leading one. You press play start on his, all the MPs are starting. So we assign our own MIDI channels on our each rig and just start noodling and, just got shit done. Sometimes it was different. Sometimes it was just me and Dre.
Yeah.
A lot of times.
What did he teach you like the most, like production wise? What was like the most valuable lesson you think he taught you?
Just being original.
Yeah.
Being like, the person to come up with something different, and that thing that pokes you in the eye and like you've never heard before is going to get your attention more than something you already heard.
Like you always hear like the craziest sounds in his songs. Like there has to be, I can't imagine what the studio sessions are like
bro, they went to all different kinds of levels, like all different kinds of levels to get shit. Like he's not scared to like do shit. I came into the studio one day to a session and there was a song called Buried Alive.
Yeah.
And like Dre had like in the live room, bags of sand, a shovel, and like a thing that was like put down on the floor just so he could get the sound effect exactly how he wanted it, of like digging like a hole, like with the sand and the shovel and the whole shit. And like just shit like that. And like, that's like a whole other level of shit, like going there.
It's just meticulous.
Yeah, meticulous.
Oh my gosh. So you work with him this first time, right? And obviously first session you guys did, was that Still Dre?
No. The first session that we did, we made a song, believe it or not, that made the Chronic album the very first day. And that was like, I think a big part of why they like really inaugurated me into the fucking fam. We did Big Egos first day. I don't know if you know that song, but it's on the Chronic.
I've heard that one. Yeah, but going into like, because at that point he brought you on full time to help him with that album then, right?
Yeah. Shit. Yeah, the whole album, beginning to end, I was involved in.
What was that? I'm curious, just because like that song is just so iconic. Like what was the moment like? Like were you just noodling and all of a sudden he's just coming in like, or like what was that like? What happened?
Still Dre?
Yeah.
Still Dre was like, I told the story so many times in interviews, but like I was in the studio and like Dre had programmed the kick and snare pattern only. It was just like boom, got boom, boom, got boom. And like it was just running on loop. And he like walked out of the room. He was like literally an earshot of the studio, but it was like a little kitchen right outside the studio. And I was noodling and all of a sudden I started playing the bling, 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 real sloppy. I was like trying to intentionally play it where each chord wasn't just like together, but just had this like stuttering effect. And as soon as I started like making sense of this little part, I was like playing it. I was really feeling it. He opened the door and he was like, "That's it right there."
Yeah.
Because we were like, it was like towards the end, and he was like, "I need a first single." And he's like, "That's it." He's like, I'm not even playing right now. He's like, "That's it." Within a couple of hours, it was like right to Jay-Z. Jay-Z wrote it, sent it back, and we had a fucking smash.
Yeah, he had Jay-Z in mind right away for that.
Yeah, he was like, "I'm sending this to Hove to write."
Damn.
He just wanted that vibe, like, and Hove killed it.
yeah, I think so.
I remember there was, I'm not gonna say names, but there was a couple of like big rappers in the studio, like, "Yo, let me get a shot at it," and it was not even close to where it was at.
So after I know, obviously, you get the huge opportunity to work with them, all these guys, right? This is kind of like you're starting to build like your own little portfolio now, right? So you're moving on to different artists. After that single drops, right, comes a huge success. Did the people just start reaching out to you? The labels start hitting you for beats?
You know, it's crazy. Like, Dre's very particular about the shit that he works on, like outside of his projects. So every time there was something that would come in through his desk and he didn't want to do it, I'd be like, "I'll do it." Let me get it. And I got very rich doing that. You know, I was like taking advantage of a lot of his shit that he didn't want to fuck with. And it was like, they're like, "It's got to do it." All right, cool. And I would knock it down one at a time, like a bunch of shit. And then there were things that we did together, like shit that he wanted to do. And we would do that. And then it got to a point where I didn't expect for Dre to hand me the key to his universe or to his whole world, you know? Like, I wanted to create my own world.
Yeah.
So, you know, I was like, "Dre, you know what? I'm gonna move back to Florida where I grew up. I'm gonna go home and I'm not gonna work on the kind of stuff we work on. I'm not gonna do like that type of music. I'm gonna completely do like my own thing and like create my own sounds." And he was cool with it. And I moved to Miami. Now I'm like rich. I'm living in Miami. You know, I bought a house. I bought a bunch of dope cars, and I was like, let the games begin. And that's when I really, really started dialing in on music. And I started working with like Chris Brown and Beyonce and Mario, like just countless, like pretty much everybody.
Yeah.
And then like it was known like, "Yo, you go over to this guy sitting at the Hit Factory, he's gonna give you a hit." So I had a line, like literally a line in the parking lot of like all like big artists, like the biggest artists there were, waiting to work with me. Like sometimes 4 of them in a day.
How many beats are you knocking out a week? Like, I know it's different every time, but
100.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
100 beats. Wow.
My son makes beats now. He's the same way.
I see that. Yeah.
He's nasty with it. He'll just go like the same way I did. That's why I'm like, "Uh-oh, this is serious."
Do you like seeing that now that your son's taking up what you do?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because he's doing it. His work ethic is just like mine, like what mine was. I'm more laid back now. Like I was like, I've already done it. Like I've been to the top of the mountain, and I still love making music. But you know, after a while, you know, the kid in you is gone, and you're just like, "Yeah, I've done this, and I appreciate it, and I love it." But he's, you know, he's there.
Going from obviously being broke and about to get kicked out of your apartment, months of rent behind, going to just having all the money in the world that you never possibly imagined. That must have been, was it surreal at this point, or was it kind of a slow adaptation?
No, it was surreal. And it was dangerous too. And, you know, because, you know, coming from, you know, you don't know what the fuck you're supposed to be doing with money at that point. If I had the right people around me at that time telling me, like, you should put this here and put that there, I'd probably be on some, you know, probably be a billionaire right now.
Yeah. At that point, how old were you at that point?
I'm like, let me see, just about 28, 29.
On top of the world.
Yeah.
Jesus, and I can't.
Trying to figure out which one of my Rolls Royces I was going to drive every day. You know?
How many cars were you picking up a week back then?
I mean, at that time, maybe like 10, but then like it grew. Like as I got a little older, I got more, and it was like bigger and more.
That gets dangerous, I believe.
Yeah.
Is it kind of like a thing of like you just need more and more? Just are you just kind of like chasing this like high?
Yeah, but I
like,
was working it. It wasn't like at all affecting my financial. Like I was making so much money that whatever I had, I was buying it for cash. I wasn't even like worried about it. It was like there was plenty of money. The problem began when I got involved in the nightlife and I stopped working. I met certain people and then cocaine came into the picture and I just stopped working. Just out of nowhere.
Yeah.
Like after I'm literally like the biggest producer in the world. I literally said, I'm going on vacation for like a decade.
And at that point you had been a studio rat your whole life, right? Mm-hmm. And what do you think? I mean, because you got to think the whole fame, success, money, it's kind of like a drug in itself, right?
Yeah. It never was a problem for me though. I was very humble, very normal, even with all the stuff that I had going on. It was when drugs got involved.
Okay.
I made that mistake. It only takes one girl to teach you about that type of stuff, or one bad friend.
Jesus. So at that point, right, you start getting involved in this. What was a normal weekend night like for Scott Storch? Like, what was that like at that point when you start getting involved in this certain thing?
It was a lot of fucking fun for the first year or two. And then it got really bad. And it became like a nightmare.
When did you realize that like maybe you're like, this is like self-aware of like the problem that was happening, like that's coming right before your eyes?
I mean, I started realizing it was a problem, but I didn't give a shit because I was a drug addict.
Yeah.
At that point, I was like, till the wheels fall off. I'm like, well, I'm just going to die. Fuck it.
I mean, that's the most dangerous thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Rich, not worrying about cash, unlimited money to spend, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you just...
What we thought was unlimited.
What you thought was unlimited at that
turned
time.
into limited.
What were your monthly expenses like at that point?
$1 million.
$1 million a month?
Every month, yeah.
What did that consist of? Just cars, house, boats,
partying,
yachts.
traveling, airplanes, boats, gas, this, that, the other, clothes, diamonds. I had a collection. You know how some people you have a collection of this or a collection of that or a hobby like this? I had every single one. There was nothing I didn't have. Like I had a collection. It was probably about $1 million of just crystal figurines. You know what I'm saying? Like the things that I wanted. Dumb shit. I remember I spent $500,000 one time on some perfume bottles that were covered with diamonds, and they sat in my bathroom.
Did you ever use them?
No, really. Actually, some drunk ass girl knocked one over and broke one of them.
Yeah, fuck it.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. So at that point, what was you're $1 million a month. What was the biggest purchase you made during this point? Like
By houses.
Houses?
Yeah.
How much you spent on? I'm just wondering how much you spent on like that house.
Money was different then, but put it this way: the house I bought then is now worth like $35 million. Yeah.
Jesus, how many square feet was the house?
Like 28,000 or something.
28,000. Was that one you had on? Was that Star Island?
Palm Island.
Palm Island. Jesus, that's nuts, man. Honestly, just going I can't. It's so far fetched me because I can't imagine that. But like living that life and just having everything and being able to do anything, and then having something come in like drugs, like post that problem, has it taught you a lot about because everyone has struggles, right? Going and
I still have struggles.
Yeah.
But you know what? I got my hands wrapped around it, and I kind of finally figured out what life is about. It's family, and it's about your friends and people that are good to you, and excelling in what you do and doing good things with your relationships and being a positive person. And I didn't realize that then. I was more interested in having a good time.
Yeah.
And, that was very selfish of me. And I live a different life now.
Yeah.
Much happier.
Yeah, I believe it. You seem very happy.
But still to this day, I'm fixing the turmoil that I caused then.
Yeah.
In financial stuff, whatever the fuck it is. It's still dealing with shit like the mess that you created, and I created layers of mess.
Yeah.
And, it took a long time to figure that shit out.
Was there a lot of bridges that got burned during that period?
For sure.
Yeah.
For sure. But at the same time, there was a lot of people that I believe, instead of running from me in the situation, could have been like trying to help me help myself. And, people that I made a lot of people really rich. And a lot of those people just bounced, like, you know what I mean? Like, and I was good to a lot of people. I was always had a good heart, but like, it was just like, I was fucked up. But I feel like some of these people should have had my back and like really pressed me to like get help and get fixed up.
Yeah. I mean, you get to see during that period who your true friends are at that point, right?
Mm-hmm.
Jesus. And man, that is nuts. That is nuts.
We live and we learn.
Right? That is the purpose of it, right? Go through turmoil.
We hope we learn.
Right. During that period, that extended, how long was that drug phase where you were addicted?
A decade.
Wow. And at that point, how long did it take for you for all that money to run out?
Like a decade.
In a decade? Coming out of it, what helped you come out of that whole phase of your life?
You know what? I tried going to rehab, it didn't work. I tried a bunch of different stuff. But then I made a geographical change and moved back to LA to get away from everything that was around me. And it was like everything that was all the bad things and demons and things that were, accessible to me. And I kind of cut myself off from it all and went to LA. I followed this girl and she kind of wanted me to get sober and pushed me and kind of painted me into a corner to do it. But only I could make myself do it. And I just remember looking in the mirror one day and I was like, you know what? I need to fucking get my life back together. And at that moment I made a crusade to do it. And I started, I found this guy, Steve Lobel. Mm-hmm. He came to interview me. And like, I knew a lot about him. I knew he was like, kind of like sort of a music manager, but a very much like a drill sergeant type, real like serious guy. And I was like, I think I need this guy to help me with my life. And we went head first into it. And I told him I want to start making music. And I asked him to manage me. And he like made me work with all new artists, no veterans. Like, it was like, I want you to work with all new shit and like grow again, but work with people, new talent, instead of like just, because I was trying to get him to pick up the phone and call Jay-Z and stuff like that. And he was like, he had the numbers and he just said, no. So we ended up working with like, at the time, all new artists. And I watched all the artists that I work with blow up right before my eyes. You know what I mean? He picked the right new artists.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Did you see a different, coming back into that game, did you feel?
Music had changed.
Music had changed, right?
Yeah.
But was it kind of an adjustment to go get back into it with like you had been gone for a good amount of time. You come back, it's different. Was it an adjustment to come back into that?
Yeah. Look, we got to take a serious taste of humble pie.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And realize like, yo, I'm not number one right now. I was one of the number ones, and I threw up numbers that are like Jordan numbers and people that can't ever forget, even though Jordan's not playing now, like you'll never take away with the numbers. But, to be a player in the league again, I had to realize that I wasn't throwing up those numbers, and I had to like start going crazy again. And I started working a lot, and I was getting some traction, getting going and getting moving. And,
some of the new artists you started with, like when you first got bang, like somebody notable that, that people would know, like who's one of the first artists you started working with when you came back?
A Boogie, Roddy Ricch, Trippie Redd, Russ,
Yeah.
a lot of those people.
That's crazy. All of them flew. That's crazy.
Yeah.
That's a smart business move right there.
Yeah.
That's smart. I mean, having, you have to get that credibility back, right? Before you can start reaching out to me. So I get his logic that you can't just go, reach out. Were you uneasy about that first? Like, you really want to work with these unknowns at first?
I mean, I just had faith. I
Yeah.
had faith in what was going on. And when I would get in these studios, I would realize that these artists all had talent. And, I figured, you know what? Let me just move forward.
Seeing where the direction of music is right now, right? We had the pump phase, smoke perp phase. I feel like this phase is kind of came and went, right?
Yeah.
So where do you see this direction of like music now heading? Because I feel like it's heading back towards your lane, melodic. Like,
Yeah, for sure. There's a lot of that. And you'll notice that because people aren't really that capable of creating melody anymore like that, of that magnitude, that you're going to start hearing like all these like remakes. Or it's like you're hearing like constantly everybody's using melodies from back in the day in a different way.
That is happening so much now.
Cover songs, cover versions of things. And
yeah, right. Because nobody, with how easy producing is now, accessible.
And this is great for me because, the shit that everybody's looking to do is what I created. I feel like I'm,
You pioneered it.
Yeah.
You pioneered that melody.
So it's easy for me.
Yeah, for sure.
The only thing that's changed is the drums.
Yeah, the drums a little bit different now, for sure. For sure. We went over that phase, right? This whole phase, you come back, all this is happening. Just stepping back a little bit, I just want to go back into some more notable things, right? So as you start working with these bigger artists at the beginning, right? So throughout your career, who has been like a session that you've walked in, you're like, that was a crazy fucking session, or been most impressed with as an artist?
Oh, more recent times?
Anytime.
And through my whole career?
Whole career.
So many times I've been blown away by artists. Beyonce being one of the greatest. Mario, Christina Aguilera. There's some people that just hit such a high bar. Dr. Dre, obviously.
Yeah.
Busta Rhymes is so talented. Ludacris. So many people. Missy Elliott, Timbaland.
50,
obviously. So I forget. Like, there's just so many people.
It just goes on and on.
Yeah.
It's impossible to remember all of them.
Fat Joe.
Yeah, Fat Joe, for sure. For sure. So when 50 first got signed with Eminem to Aftermath, right? They brought you in to obviously work with him.
Yeah. I was working with him. And then there was a point where I think briefly him and Dre weren't speaking, and I was already living in Florida, and they were like, yo, Scott, we need you. And I came through with the candy shop in just a little bit, literally in like 2 days' time. And we made those records, and they both became big hits.
This is bad. That was in a 2-day span. That was in a 2-day span. You did both those beats.
Yeah. We did them at this house I put together, the studio house I had on North Bay Road. Not North Bay Road, on Pine Tree.
Pine Tree.
Yeah, here in Miami.
Jesus. The amount of talent that you've been exposed to, I feel like just going through, is it like, it's mind-boggling to me just to see how much talent you've worked with, how many hits you actually have made. Like, obviously a lot of it is the artist, but I feel like a lot of it has to do with just your production skills, which is obviously why all these people were coming to you.
Well, you know what? I was making records that had radio sensibility to it. And that was a common thread, and things that could become hits. Because I didn't want to waste my time making things that weren't hits.
Yeah.
I'm not an album cut motherfucker.
Yeah. Were you thinking about it when you were always producing it? Did you have that in mind? Like, obviously you're noodling, you're finding what works, but did you always think about production wise, like what's going to hit for the radio? What's going to be this most radio ready song?
Bro, it's melody, 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 and melody.
Yeah.
If you make a memorable melody that, like, when you turn it on, as soon as you press play, that thing happens that you're like not going to forget, it's going to be a fucking hit. As long as the artist don't fuck it up.
That's true. Back then, how much, if you don't mind me asking, how much were you getting per beat?
Between 80 and 100,000.
And you're knocking out 10, 20, 30 a week?
Yeah.
Jesus.
At least 10 a week.
Wow. 80 to 100 grand. That is insane. And that is absolutely
I will
insane.
do you a favor every now and then, like 2 for 100. You're like close with me.
2 for 100. That's great. So moving on, obviously we're in today's age, right? What kind of stuff are you working on now? Do you have anything you were coming out with, or any business adventures that you're doing on the side?
I have a ton of stuff I'm doing, like I know a lot of people. I met a lot of people along the way, and some of them became real cool friends of mine. And some of them are really successful, and they happen to be really cool friends of mine. And a lot of people are inviting me into their worlds of things that I wouldn't even have thought that I would be involved in. And one of them is Web3 stuff. And like a good friend of mine, my boy Scott, another Scott, he has a massive data company. He also has a son named Zach. And Zach is like, you know, him and his father had created this like company with their friend Danny called Mosverse, which is like a Web3 tech company. And they've got a bunch of different cool products. And, you know, because of who I am, I have a certain intrinsic value with other people I know, that I connect a lot of dots. And people, you know, like Scott, have invited me into these businesses that have potential to be massive businesses. So like I have a bunch of cool stuff going on. I'm just waiting for the right one to pop. You know what I mean? So that's where I'm at.
Are you doing anything in regards to, like, you know how Cal lets out music as an artist, like his own album? Do you have anything in the works like that?
I've been talking about it. You know, it's easier said than done, but yeah, I definitely want to do some kind of a cool Scott Storch project. You know,
if let's say hypothetically you're doing this, right? What is some, like, matching these people? What do you think is like a dream? Maybe I shouldn't say that because I'd be giving away a song for you, but like a good, like, who's some artist that you'd want to bring on maybe for that?
I think you can imagine who the ones that would be. You know, obviously put some of the new greats and the old greats together, but.
Do you find that, I mean, that's kind of the route now I see a lot of producers doing. They're going out as like artists and making these whole albums. That's kind of a new, is that newer?
Well, yeah, and like in most recent times, like one artist, not just a variety of artists, but like one artist will team up with one producer and they make a collab album and call it like that.
Yeah, I did Metro Boomin.
That's like the thing. I'm going to probably do something like that probably first before I do anything. It's finding the right believer.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, and with your town, I mean, because I like I was saying, beats are heading back towards, like you said, throwbacks, remixes, all this stuff. Like this is all right up your alley. So it's like it's
a good time for it.
It's like it's easy pickings right now for you.
Yeah, I kind of got to clear like a path in my life where I close a lot of these deals that I've been working with and have a little moment where I can just really focus on that.
Yeah.
And that moment's coming real soon. I really feel it.
Yeah. Well, Scott, I appreciate you for your time, man.
Thank you.
Great interview. I appreciate you coming. I appreciate you
helping
me out. I appreciate it, man.
That's
Thank you so much. Everybody, we'll see you next week.
Yep.
Peace.